Welcome to AlphaTalk, where we discuss all things auto. From F&I to industry updates, AlphaTalk is here to keep you in the loop.
Well, welcome everybody to another episode of AlphaTalk. This is one of my favorite series of episodes that we get to do. It's our Women in the Auto Industry episode. We're very lucky to have a very special guest with us today, Rebecca Silvia. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Bryan.
Yeah, so, those listeners that may have been following us for a while, you know that this is a recurring segment that we like to talk about. We like to bring in industry experts, but that also happen to be, female leaders in our industry. Yeah. As we've mentioned, and, we'll get into it a little bit more. Obviously, our industry is probably... would you say predominantly male dominated?
Absolutely.
I don't think I'd say dominated though, because I think most of the female leadership that I've been around are really some of the people that are making moves in the industry, right?
Yeah.
And so I love the opportunity to create a space and a platform for people like yourself who have grown up in the auto industry, spent a lot of time here, really to tell your story. And so that's what, we're lucky enough to have that with Rebecca today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Rebecca, for those of you who don't know, or for our listeners who don't know you, share with our listeners kind of who you are, what you've done, and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, so I am Rebecca Silvia, and I am currently the Profit Participation Director here at Alpha. I've actually been in the automotive industry 20 plus years. It's always scary when you say that because you're like, how can it possibly have already been that long? But I pretty much, like you said, I grew up in this industry, starting back 20 years ago, really in the lead business and helping the administrator with making phone calls to their customers and really just doing that customer service touch base. And it really just took off from there.
Okay.
So I love what I do, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
This business is so exciting.
Do you mind sharing with our listeners maybe some of the places you've worked?
Yeah, so I actually worked at AUL.
Okay.
Service Contracts.
Great. Yeah, fantastic company.
Yeah, for close to 18 years, and then we were acquired by Protective back in 2022. So worked there until coming here.
Yeah. You got to see AUL when they kind of were just, I wouldn't say necessarily starting out, but pretty close.
Yeah, I mean in 2005, so pretty much in the really early years, right? We were right before the 2009, right, when that happened. Yes. I kind of got to watch and see how the business evolved through that, which was a really interesting time. But yeah, I was around early on.
Yeah. Now tell me, for our listeners who may not know, AUL obviously based in Napa. Were you there for the Napa earthquake?
Yes.
How was that?
That was an interesting time. Yeah, I actually was right underneath a sprinkler. The building.
Okay.
My desk was gone. I had all these papers on top of it, and yeah, it was a pretty interesting time. It took about 2 months for them to actually get all the water out of the building.
Wow.
But we recovered.
So for any of our listeners who may have been working with Rebecca back in the day, if you didn't get that claim filed, I promise it wasn't because she was intentionally doing it.
It wasn't my fault.
I wanted to give you an alibi now,
Thank you.
after so many years. So I'd love to just know a little bit more about that experience with AUL and Protective. What was it that, I know you mentioned kind of how you started your career, but how did that career evolution go? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so that's the really fascinating part of our business, right, is that it's ever evolving. It's constantly changing. And so when I started at AUL, I was doing the lead generation, but then I quickly moved up as other positions became available, working through business development, doing project work. And then I actually led the inside sales team for about 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Prior to the organization coming to me and saying, okay, we've been doing profit participation for a while now, and we really need somebody to own that portion of our business, right? They had different people doing different jobs, and it just wasn't very cohesive. Everyone was doing something different, and nobody really knew what each other was doing. So I took that on and started drinking from a fire hose, as you can imagine, right? We all know what learning, the retro, you think you know the space, right? You're like, okay, I know what admin fee is, and I know what these different things are, but you just don't really know all the ins and outs of like the participation. So then I thought I had mastered that just as quickly as Protective acquired us.
Oh, okay.
And, my role pretty much changed almost overnight.
Really?
Because, Yeah, they had a need for what they called presenters at the time. And I was like, okay, what am I getting myself into? If you would have asked me 15 years ago, like my job was going to be presenting to clients, I would have told you you're nuts.
Yeah.
Like I don't like who wants to talk in front of people, right? But that actually what became my job. And so really what it became, it grew into this role where I was now client facing. And in all the other positions, I talked to dealers over the phone, but this was completely different. This was in person. I was flying around the country and meeting with dealers in person to actually walk them through the performance of their programs.
Yeah.
Of course, we did plenty of Teams meetings as well.
Right.
And, those were interesting calls because sometimes I'd be looking at, a forehead or, a nose or whatever. But yeah, it was definitely challenging for me because I had to learn not just the retro and reinsurance, but now it was about DOWC, right?
Yeah.
And that's an animal all of its own. But yeah, it was a great move for me, for sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see just, I think that's one of the things that's unique about our space, whether you're male or female. I know we're talking about women specifically in the auto industry, but just how you can really evolve and grow your career in areas that maybe push you in ways that you didn't think. You start somewhere and you think, okay, I'm good at this, I've got this down. And then there's just all these new opportunities that really kind of raise their head. I have a question for you because I imagine you'd been in the auto space for a while by the time you'd kind of taken over this profit participation role with AUL and then Protective. Walk us through, like maybe there's a listener out there who's working behind a desk and saying, man, I know what the auto industry is like. I know that, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever that, but I'm because I'm female, I'm probably going to be in the minority of the people I'm going to talk to. How did you kind of deal with that? Like you're going in and you're talking to primarily, I would imagine, male owners about, things like offshore tax, opportunities and how to be more tax advantaged, how to leverage that. Really, creating kind of an overall business structure that it's a complex thought anyway, right? And so, kind of stepping into that. Explain to our listeners what that looked like for you.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, obviously, it's really intimidating, right? Because you're walking into these dealerships and you're meeting with the dealer principal. But for me, really what I did was I just leaned into my confidence, right? And I really thought about what it was that I knew and the value that I was actually bringing the dealer by just simply having a conversation like we're having right now and educating them. And it was fascinating to me because oftentimes, I'm going into these meetings with many other people. And what I noticed very quickly is how I was able to gain the dealer's trust just by simply bringing that knowledge and the confidence of what I was saying. I would say things with conviction, not like I think, it was definitely very fact-based and data-driven. And many times what I would find was the dealer would actually come and sit right next to me and say, show me more.
Oh, yeah.
And really engage in those conversations. And a lot of times the rest of the room was kind of like almost not even there, right? Because we were just having this conversation.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say it would just be leaning in with that confidence and with conviction on what you are bringing to the table.
Yeah, and I'm sure, especially somebody with your level of experience, having all of those years kind of in the space, after, 10,000 hours, you become an expert. So what is it when you have 20 or 30,000?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I feel the longer I'm in, I'm like, oh man, I think I'm losing it. But no, that to your point, I think having that confidence because you have so much experience working with those types of individuals and in this field, and really it's pretty specialized. Even working for a third party administrator is already specialized enough, and then working in profit participation is even more so, right? There's maybe a couple dozen people out there who do that type of a role.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to not be afraid to just simply not have the answer, right? Like sometimes what I found was sometimes dealers would ask questions, sometimes for the first time, something I had never heard, and to just really be honest and say, you know what, that's a really good question. I'm going to have to get back to you on that, rather than saying something where you might be stretching it or not actually have your facts in front of you.
Yeah. You have such a strong background in the auto industry. I'm curious, because I love this question, right? It's like the interview question. But you obviously, well, I don't want to speak for you. None of us, I feel like, are like, hey, when I grow up, you know what I want to do is work in profit participation for a third party administrator. I would love, number one, to know what did you think that you were going to do when you were growing up, and how did that kind of evolve to falling into the auto industry or working in the auto industry?
Yeah, it's absolutely one of the best questions to ask those of us that are in this industry, right? Because none of us actually seek it out. And so that was actually exactly my case, right? I didn't seek out the auto industry. I like to laugh and say the auto industry seeked me out,
Yeah.
right? So at the time where I was found out about the auto industry, I was actually going to school, working on getting my associate's degree. And from the time I can remember, I always was like, I'm going to be a nurse. I really wanted to go into nursing. And then I took an anatomy class, and I realized that, the reality of what nursing actually was, all the glamour sort of kind of faded away. And I was like, this isn't really for me. So I was working 2 jobs. I was waitressing, and I actually started working for a real estate agent. And I thought, well, real estate is great.
Yeah.
I want to get into this business. So I started taking real estate classes. And I was working for the real estate agent, actually working her leads.
Okay.
And as you can imagine what that kind of turn was, she had potential buyers that were calling into her 800 number. And my job was to follow up on those buyers and call them during dinner time and get hung up on a lot.
Right.
Right? But what it did do for me was gave me so much good experience about what that sort of marketing and cold calling was like. Mm-hmm. And it's just so odd because it was right at that time where I was working for her that the position at AUL came about.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, we've got this direct marketing position. And I was like, what the heck is a direct marketing?
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that was, right? But it was basically what I was doing, but I would be getting paid for it, right? Because with the real estate agent, I didn't get paid till she closed on the house.
Right.
You know how long that could take, right? So it was really a no-brainer for me. I went and applied for the job, and I went and interviewed. I actually had 3 interviews. And by the last interview, believe it or not, I was like, if I don't get this job, I'm actually going to be devastated.
Yeah.
Like, I want to work here. The people that I met were just so incredibly wonderful. Mm-hmm. And the environment there, I really wanted to work for a place like that. So.
And it had nothing to do with the fact that they made you, do you had to do wine tasting at lunch, right? They were like,
those were terrible benefits.
You have to if you're going to be in Napa.
Right.
It's automatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned how much you wanted to work for AUL after meeting the people. What are maybe some of your career highlights so far?
I think one of my biggest career highlights was definitely once I stepped into the leadership role. And I actually began to influence not only the business outcomes that we were experiencing, but also the growth of people. And I think for me, just being able to see the impact of my work, no matter what it is, whether it's just improving a process or if it's, improving a relationship with a client or just simply helping a colleague grow, I think the fact that when I got into that role, I could actually see the impact that it was making was huge. Yeah. That was definite. And building teams, building the team of people and mentoring them was my biggest highlight.
How important do you think it is for, I guess generally speaking, mentorship, but specifically female mentorship in our industry? How important do you think that's been to your career? And it sounds like you building teams, right?
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to come by, right? Because in our industry, it's starting to evolve. There's more women kind of coming into the more executive management leadership roles, but I do think that's actually an area that we still have to improve. I was fortunate to have a few of them, but I really didn't have kind of a wide availability towards females specifically. I've had some great role models, but female specifically has been a little bit hard to come by, for sure.
Yeah, and that's what we hope honestly for this channel is giving just exposure. Again, I think that there's probably listeners of ours out there right now who are searching for something, like maybe they just kind of fell into this industry, right? They're working those long hours. They're sitting behind a desk waiting for that next turn to come in, and wondering if this is really going to be for them. And our hope is to give that exposure and to give that openness to say, like, hey, Rebecca you've kind of trailblazed and created an opportunity. Reach out, talk to me, have a conversation, right? About what this was like, and that's what we hope out of doing this. So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned role models, and I know that you love this question. We talked a little bit about it before we got on air, but I would love to know maybe who is a role model, or somebody that, whether it's industry specific or not, just somebody that you really define or helped you define your career.
Definitely was my dad.
Okay.
And I think it started back as far as I can remember, being a child. And he always said to me, you can achieve anything that you set your mind to. And it really carried along throughout my entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a man who set the bar high, but he supported me all along the way. I mean, I remember a specific example when I was in college and I had this paper due and I was really stressed out about it. And my dad just sort of brought me back down to earth and was like, just one step in front of the other. Like, just try not to think about everything that's coming after this. Just think about what you're doing, what's right in front of you. But not only was he just an incredibly supportive person in my life throughout my entire career, he's definitely somebody that even to this day I admire. I mean, he was the epitome of just integrity and resilience, the things that he's gone through and constantly achieving, right? It's like, Dad, are you ever going to slow down? Just 3 years ago, he got his second master's degree in engineering management. And I'm like, Dad, you need to retire and enjoy your life, right? But he's somebody that inspires me every single day.
Yeah. That's, and I think that work ethic, right, is something that can't necessarily be taught. I think it's, you have to see it in action. And what a great, so is your dad in the auto space?
No, he's actually an engineer.
Okay.
And he knows nothing about the auto space. But
he can probably build a car though.
Yeah, but he's so famous for like all these sayings. One of his famous sayings throughout my career has been, the cream always rises to the top.
Yeah. And
he just constantly reminds me that the dedication and the work you put in matters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can, attest to that, even just from having you on as a guest, the amount of notes I think that you took to prepare yourself. And I had to remind Rebecca that, we're really just talking about you. So there's no wrong answers on this quiz. No, I think
Thank you for that.
I think that's such a great lesson. And what a great role model. And it's awesome to see. I love, that when people get to a certain age and those people are slowing down. Not your dad.
No.
He's going to go and get that other degree.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. We have such a diverse listening, audience. What if you were to do this interview, or maybe you're sitting across from somebody who you're interviewing for a role, and they may not have any industry experience. What would you tell maybe somebody who wants to get in the auto space, women specifically, maybe the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Well, I would definitely say that, not necessarily calling it bad, right? But, it's very challenging, right? And there's a lot that comes along with that. But I think it is also rewarding, like the rewarding side of it, because it is so challenging. I think the good is that it's going to stretch you. It's going to cause you to go outside of your comfort zone. But I would definitely encourage any woman, because of how much it actually can cause you to grow and how challenging it can be, and really the impact that you can make in the business. But I think really what it comes down to is your ability to kind of trust the process and not be afraid to take risks. I think early on, especially when you're learning and you're trying to figure out how everything works, it can be easy to sort of be afraid to step out and make risks or take risks. And I think that is important. That's how you're going to grow and how you're going to earn respect with your colleagues.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough that I get to attend a lot of like the women in business luncheons and advocacy in that area in particular. And that's one of the things that they say. They say, for whatever reason, sometimes it's harder, I think, for women to speak up, especially in a room of peers, and whether they're, the minority in that room because they are female or not. So I love that you kind of say, hey, you got to take the bull by the horns. Doesn't matter who's sitting across from you. Know your stuff, right?
Right.
But don't be afraid if you know it to say it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that's such a powerful message, I think, for anybody out there, but especially women who are maybe in the industry and wondering where their voice is. I love that we're fortunate enough to be surrounded by people like you that know their stuff and aren't afraid. I mean, we just had a conversation today, right, about challenging the status quo. Yeah. And I've been in those meetings with our C-suite who are very supportive, but they can be intimidating sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important, that you don't allow yourself to kind of shrink, right, and not speak up and say something when you see or you have an idea. I mean, I think we as women bring such a fresh perspective to the different areas of the business, and we really need to not be afraid to speak up.
Yeah,
say what we think.
I always think that that's fascinating that, with any industry where it's so dominated by one, type of, like, whether it's, male or female, but especially in our industry, I mean, half of our car owners are female, right? It's not like it's only men that are out there buying cars, but it's so, underrepresented, I think, in our industry. And I feel like business leaders, especially in our space, whether you're a GM, an owner, you're in the finance department trying to hire somebody, just remember that half of your client base is going to be female, and there is this ability to connect with people who maybe have a different lens than you.
Yeah, I think when I mentioned earlier, I would walk into the dealership and it was interesting to kind of just watch and observe, what was actually going on. And I think that sometimes that can be overlooked, and so it's really important to just acknowledge that and be aware.
Yeah. Now, do you think this again feels like a loaded question, because I you know what, you might catch me off guard, but if you were to look back on your career, and you've worked for some fantastic companies, which I do think that helps make a difference, right, on the trajectory of your career, but just the auto industry as a whole, do you feel like it's something that you would actively pursue, knowing that you are now, or you've got a daughter, I know, and you've got some twins that are here. Would you suggest moving into this industry for anybody in your family?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I talked about it a little bit earlier, and I, of course, would be upfront. It's challenging, right? But what industry isn't? There's going to be challenges no matter where you go. But I think for me, just knowing that the opportunities are continuing to evolve and what we're seeing happening with the business, definitely consider it. Absolutely consider it, because you never know. I mean, I would have never dreamt 20 years ago that I'd be sitting here today. And I honestly can say it's just been incredibly rewarding. It's been great to just see how the business has evolved. And I would absolutely encourage any woman considering to go for it.
Yeah.
And look at joining.
Now, with that specifically, what areas do you think are probably the most needing of women in our industry? And it can be our traditional roles or whatever, but just from your lens, again, there's no test on this. Where do you think the biggest opportunities are for women in our industry?
Well, where I've seen it is, the technology side of things, customer service. I've seen it with anything client-facing roles, like what I actually do. Now, interesting enough, there's a lot of women coming into this space. I think we just have a different approach, and that's definitely been something that has really turned the corner, and where we're seeing just a lot more opportunity.
Yeah, no, I get teased a lot by my wife about you're not listening, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I'm trying here. So I think that to your point, I think that women tend to listen more. Men tend to talk more.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I'm in this role here, doing this podcast. No, I think that's such great advice for our and the opportunities for women are increasing. I think that a lot of companies want to see that other lens. They want that. They're actively pursuing excellent leaders, and they do want that diverse background, right? It is, again, our customer base is half female. We have contract holders, and we hear it all the time, even in our company meetings, about how this there's a mom out there who's like breaking down on the side of the road,
Right.
and she's got kids in the car, and she's like, okay, now what am I gonna do with my car? And I think sometimes that messaging gets lost. It can be just a contract holder, or it's just a person on the other side, right?
Right. And I think that that's actually one of the things that, drove me in my career was being a mom, being a woman. And I mentioned earlier, that I didn't necessarily have a role model. And I think that's why I took it so serious to step up and actually become that.
Yeah.
Because we really desperately do need that female perspective, and that women, that are coming into this business, I've also really taken it serious to mentor them.
Yeah. Well, how about this? Can I give you a shout out? I'm going to give you just a minute. I would love, we talked about the importance of mentorship and seeking that out. Do you have somebody that from your career where you're like, you saw this diamond in the rough and you were able to mentor that person, whether it is male or female? Obviously this segment's focused more on women in the industry, but I would love to know maybe just, one of your career highlights when it comes to mentorship.
Oh, yeah. So I have to give a shout out. Her name's Abby Crow.
Okay.
And
Hi, Abby. Hopefully you're listening.
Hopefully she is. I'll make sure she does.
Okay, good.
And I actually hired her. She was working 12-hour shifts as a service director at an RV dealership.
Wow.
And I remember the very first conversation we had was very similar to this. And interviews really tend to start off very serious, right? It's like, oh, I have this question that I need to ask you. And it just free flowed into conversation. And what I realized very quickly was how driven and how hard working of a person that she was.
Yeah.
And I really was fortunate enough to be able to mentor her and bring her into profit participation and give her the opportunity to learn about this business and what it had to offer. And she is doing incredibly successful. She's amazing, and I feel really fortunate to even have been given that opportunity.
Now, is she still in the industry?
Yeah.
Okay.
She is.
It's hard for anybody to get out, so I figured, but
she's stuck now.
That's exactly. No, that's great. Well, Rebecca, before we let you go, I've got just a couple of last questions for you. We talk a lot about your the ability to connect with people, your desire to mentor people, and the need for mentorship, especially in women and female leadership. So, outside of all of the great things that you've done in your career, if it's a Saturday, where are we going to find you?
Oh gosh, I love nature. I love to be outside, and I think it's just kind of like the perfect equal balance to working all week and kind of being very data driven and numbers. And
right.
I like to hike. I love to be outside. I love to garden. Pretty much that's my thing.
That's your happy place.
Yes.
Well, it's good that you're here in Utah then. You should come and visit.
Yes.
Texas is still great too.
Yeah.
You get that. So,
yeah.
And I got to ask, just because it is college football season and you are from Texas. So it's a Saturday. Who are you going to root for at that college football team? Who is it?
Oh, it's the Longhorns.
Okay, There we go. All right. Sorry to all of our A&M Aggies out there. We still support the college. We love the KOT Foundation, but no, that's great. Well, I too am a little bit of a Longhorns supporter as well. So,
nice.
Well, it's been great having you on. I can't wait to get you on again as a guest, really to talk about your specialty, which is the profit participation plans. I have to get more educated on it, so we can have an intelligent conversation on it, and I don't bore you. But if you are listening, Rebecca will be a returning guest. She's already committed.
Mm-hmm.
I've got her on camera now, so she is 100% saying yes. To really talk about the ins and outs of profit participation and how you can leverage that to make your dealership more successful, your agency more successful. Those are all really important keys to having that long-term lifetime value with your dealerships, or even just being able to add additional points and really that legacy planning for a delership. So I'm really excited to get in there, but more importantly, it's been great getting to know you.
Thank you very much.
And hopefully our viewers and listeners have a great sense of who you are, and look forward to having you on again.
Thank you so much, Bryan.
AlphaTalk is an Alpha Warranty Services production. Learn more at alphawarranty.com.